I was the queen of living off of Fairlife shakes, and I didn't realize, truthfully, how much better I could feel. Again, not that protein shakes are bad, but I just don't think my body agreed with them. They didn't make my stomach feel very good, and I'd always end up being hungry right after. And so just having an actual meal changed the game for me in terms of food noise. And again, there's a time and place when you need something quick and convenient, but having real food in the morning completely changed the trajectory of my journey and how I felt around food.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Lean Life Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan.
And I'm Maddie.
And today we're going to be going over turning down the food noise and 5 swaps that will actually keep you full. So I'm going to shut up and I'll let Maddie kind of dive in here.
Yeah, we're super excited to dive into this because it's something that we talk about a ton with our clients all the time. So I'm going to set the scene for Ryan a little bit here, and then we'll kind of dive into food swaps and actual swaps that we suggest to clients to help them turn down that food noise in their fat loss phases. But essentially think of it as like you just ate, you've tracked all your food for the day, and you're still thinking about your next meal, or you're thinking about food 20 minutes after you're done eating. And that constant pull or negotiation with yourself, constantly thinking about that next meal. Should I have a little bit more right now? When do I get to eat again? That's just pure food noise or food chatter. And we're hearing more and more about food noise. It's usually not a willpower problem. It's a volume problem, and you're feeling hungry sometimes. So today we're going to give you 5 simple swaps that let you eat more, stay fuller longer, and kind of finally quiet that food noise that you may have. Have you ever dealt with food noise?
Love it. Yeah. Just kind of to add to the intro here, food noise is one of the biggest reasons that women abandon their plan, midweek. And it's also something that I've heard frequently on discovery calls when people reach out for coaching, and something along the lines will be said of, and again, it goes something like this. Hey, Ryan, I'm looking to start a program. I'm looking to lose some weight. I'm curious about your process. I hope it's not macro based, because that gave me a lot of food noise. Or another form that I'll hear it is, I felt like I always had to live in my fitness pal. I was constantly thinking about food, and we've heard that from clients, friends, family, etc. And to the extent where people think that tracking food in general, or being aware, creating that awareness that we teach around food, can create food noise. And I think having context there definitely matters, because yes, if you are tracking food, you're tracking calories, or if you're a coach like us and you're talking to people about their food choices and decisions all the time, especially like when I'm in a diet or you're in a diet, that adds to our food noise a little bit. And so it's not a one size fits all. Food noise doesn't just mean I'm constantly hungry all freaking day. It shows up in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not about eating less. It's about making smarter decisions with your food and being able to, if the goal is fat loss, to stay in that calorie deficit. So I'll let you start with point number 1 here.
Absolutely. You made a good point, though, just a minute ago about food noise in general. It's so different for every single person, but I think it's good to note that when you start a fat loss journey or you are tracking your food, inevitably you are going to have a little bit more food noise, and that is okay. But having these other things in your back pocket to kind of work through the food noise, or how to feel more full, think about food less, is so important in this journey. So we're going to dive into what food noise actually is. It usually is the constant thoughts about food that kind of pull you off track, or the negotiation with yourself, wondering if you should go have the donut that's in the break room, or should you go get lunch with your coworkers, should you go on the date night. Like, you have all of these thoughts around food. And I think that often drains people's mental energy. The decision fatigue kicks in, and you're just constantly thinking about food. What's for dinner? What are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing this weekend? When are we getting groceries? And you're just thinking about it so much. I think we probably deal with that a little bit as well. We've learned that decision fatigue can happen really quickly.
Yeah, and that's more of a systems problem, in my opinion, not necessarily a self-control or lack of willpower problem. We've gone into great depth on that, and willpower actually not being a finite resource, but decision fatigue is there. It's true. And if you're unprepared, i.e. you don't have the systems in place, or you don't have food prepped, and you get asked, well, what's for dinner? You're going to have to not only think about it, but you're not prepared to actually go and make the decision or eat the food, because it's not there. And so it's going to take even more decisions of, well, well, what actually should I eat? What could I cook? How do I stay on track? And now you're, again, sitting there glued to my MyFitnessPal playing macro Tetris, seeing what you can fit in for the rest of your day. And so that's what we want to avoid. So I'll let you go into the next point here, and we can get into talking about some of the swaps that we feel are some of the better ones and things that you can pay attention to when you are embarking on a fat loss or fitness journey.
Yeah, so I'll start with our first swap here. Again, these aren't one size fits all. Doesn't mean you have to change these all overnight, but a lot of these things don't change the taste or the texture of your foods that much. Just different ways of reducing that food noise, knowing one, you have a plan, and two, probably going to be able to eat a little bit more for fewer calories without, feeling without having to remove a certain food that you like and then feeling like you're also shrinking your plate and then just thinking about how, oh, I'm on a diet, I can't have all these things. We want to mitigate that feeling as well.
Yeah.
So one of the number one swaps that we suggest is if you're buying 80/20 ground beef, you could make the simple swap to 96/4. I think that's what we buy usually.
Yeah, or 93.7. I mean, there's a big difference between 96.4 and 93.7. If you're red meat specifically, I buy 96.4. It's maybe $1 or so per pound more expensive, but it saves me, I don't even remember how many grams of fat. It's been so long since I bought 93.7, but a considerable amount. That way I can hit my protein goal easier, stay lower on my fats, makes achieving that calorie deficit a lot easier. And there's no taste difference. So the leaner meat, even though, yeah, it is a little more premium, I'm getting more protein, less fat, and it helps me hit my goals. It's worth the trade-off.
Absolutely. And I don't think the difference in taste is that different really either. However, if you don't love the taste of super lean beef, the other options here for leaner meats that you can have more of for less calories would be like lean ground turkey or chicken breast, or one that I often suggest to people is ground chicken. I had never really eaten it much until I got deeper into diet phases, but it's fun to have different textures and different volumes of food. Definitely makes hitting your goals a lot easier when you're more full.
Yeah, and I just want to preface here too, we're not the type of people that are going to say, buy the fat-free or lowest calorie option of everything. I think at one point we kind of followed that in our own journeys and maybe even coached that a little bit early on to an extent, but as I've learned, that's not always the best quality of options. I'm not going to say that fat-free cheese is going to kill you. I'm not going to say that it's also going to keep you in a calorie deficit. You got to do what works for you, and you have to buy the foods that you might be, I guess, kind of cornered into a few different options of buying options like that your family is going to want to also eat. So you're not buying all of these other foods in parallel with all of your family's foods. If you're, say, a working mom and you're cooking dinner for 5 every night plus your husband, and then you're trying to cook all your food separately, it can be done. We've coached people through it. We've had clients that said that this is the only way that works, and they just run everything in parallel. But we also try and attack it from the angle of sustainability. But main point being there, you don't always have to pick the lowest calorie option. You just have to pick certain things and stick to it and learn the trade-offs and what works for you. So
yeah, learn the things that you like and don't like. You don't have to be married to one or the other, but just reminding you that you don't have to eat less food. You can just make a lot smarter choices and feel way more full. So that leads us right into swap number 2 of what we highly recommend is if you are in a diet phase and you're feeling hungry, a huge one that we see is changing out white rice for potatoes instead. I think this is great too. Potatoes are going to be one of the most satiating foods that you can have. It's going to be more volume on your plate. You're going to feel fuller longer. And there's also just so many different ways you can cook potatoes for different textures that, in my opinion, it's fun to make those swaps. White rice, definitely easy to take to work. But we've also had clients make baked potatoes in microwaves and realize how much more full they can actually be.
I think one of the biggest things here too, not only is the food volume different between potatoes and white rice, but I just want to give an example here so it's real. When someone is on 1750 calories and they're saying, hey, I'm hungry, and you go, and the first thing I do as a coach is I go and look at their food log, and I would imagine you probably do the same. We coach very similarly. You a little bit more on the emotional side, me more on the logical side, a little bit, like we have our differences, but at the end of the day, we would both go and look at that person's food log, and we would probably go search for, okay, were the macros hit, yes or no? We would look at how consistently that looked throughout the week. We'd look at the hunger throughout the week. And then from there, we would look at the fiber intake. I look at the macros. Are the macros being hit? Is the protein being hit? Yes or no? If that box is checked, I'm going to go check the fiber next. And sometimes people that say, oh, I'm hungry, they'll have 3 or 6, maybe on a good day, 9 grams of fiber. And I go, okay, hold up. What we need to focus on is starting to get away from all of these convenience foods and the foods that are super easy to cook, like the little microwavable packets of rice or the rice cups that you use even.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with those inherently, but you're not going to be getting fiber. Whereas if you have something like potatoes and asparagus or potatoes and Brussels sprouts or sweet potatoes instead of that little microwavable rice packet, those foods are going to be 2-3 times the amount of volume on your plate that you actually have to eat and chew through. And then also the fiber that comes with it too, that is going to help with satiety and keep you more full. So it's not always just white rice, potatoes, this for that, this for that. But I mean, fundamentally, yeah, those are the decisions you have to start looking at.
I think you start to become really in tune with your body and how certain foods make you feel. Also, you might notice once you start making these changes of how much more full you can be on potatoes. Like, I'll use myself for an example. I'm working with a fitness coach right now, not even in a diet phase, but I was on my cycle last week. And I have become so in tune with my body that I know rice isn't necessarily bad for me by any means. But with higher hunger last week being on my cycle, in my check-in to him, I had mentioned, like, I probably would have been better off with 1 or 2 of these meals, changing out that rice for potatoes, probably would have just helped kind of keep that hunger at bay a little bit more. So it's little swaps like that that just make a big difference. Leading into swap number 3, protein shakes to solid food. This is a good one. Shakes are a tool, not a meal. I want to let you elaborate on this because I was the queen of
You didn't like meat.
I didn't like meat. Yeah. I really struggled. Meal prepped meat, eating meat frequently, eating it multiple times per day. I really struggled with this.
Yeah. How do I want to begin? If you're constantly hungry, the signal to eat more real food instead. So I would say, yeah, if again, I want to make this real. So I'll use my past self, for example. I don't think protein powder is bad by any means. I think there's specific use cases for it. When I go to the lake or during the summertime, especially if I'm not dieting and my calories are higher, I will lean on protein shakes a little bit more. A lot of times that looks like a protein shake and some cashews in the morning. And, maybe if I'm going to work out, I'll have some carbs with it. But sometimes just protein shake, cashews, just like simple protein in the fat, and I can ride that wave and use that like on a work day or on a summer day until like 11 or noon. If I'm in a diet, the last thing I'm having is a protein shake. I want a full blown, big, voluminous meal that I can eat and feel full off of. That protein shake and cashews goes down in like 4 seconds. The cashews are in a handful and it's gone. I didn't have any time to enjoy that meal. However, I am trading for convenience of I can just get that in very easily and I can just carry on with my day and I don't have to think about much. But if dieting or being in a fat loss phase is something that you're currently doing and you're doing stuff like that, you are quite literally asking to be hungry later on in the day. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And so I think learning how to remove those, for example, when someone says, yeah, I hit my macros perfectly and I got all my protein in, but I'm still really hungry or I feel bloated. And you go and look and they have 2 scoops of gold standard whey protein, or they have 1 scoop of plant-based, yada, yada, whatever, insert brand here, protein, and a Bear Bells bar and a Built Puff bar all in the same day. And you're like, wow, you supplemented like 90 or 130 grams of protein out of your goal that was 140 or 220, depending if you're male or female. They're supplementing over half of their protein and wondering why A, they're feeling hungry, and B, they're feeling bloated and kind of like shit. So learning how to remove that, it doesn't mean don't have those. Obviously hitting your protein is good inherently, but trying to do it with actual foods, and one step further being the best healthy whole foods is going to be the most optimal. And that's going to take prep work to do, because if you're cooking every single meal throughout the day, whether you work at home or not, we both work from home. We know how hard it is still to have to cook every single meal as you go throughout the day. And you and I both meal prep bulk proteins and vegetables and fruits, even portioning out yogurt bowls and stuff like that for you the night before, because it makes it easier to stay on track. So yeah, whole food for the win.
I will say for myself too, removing protein shakes felt very scary. It felt hard. I didn't know if I could do it. I was the queen of living off of Fairlife shakes. And I didn't realize truthfully how much better I could feel. Again, not that protein shakes are bad, but I just don't think my body agreed with them. They didn't make my stomach feel very good. And I'd always end up being hungry right after. And so just having an actual meal changed the game for me in terms of food noise and starting my morning with food versus it being like a quick protein shake. Again, there's a time and place when you need something quick and convenient, but having real food in the morning completely changed the trajectory of my journey and how I felt around food.
Before we move on, I want to ask you a question too. I think when people hear don't have protein shakes, and I want to speak to your old self that used to not like eating meat or full meals and you just wanted to supplement basically all of your protein. There's steps to it, there's layers to it. But for the ladies listening to this, I just want you to know, I hear you, I feel you. I watched Maddie go through it. She didn't love it, but it doesn't have to look like you have to eat 8 ounces of ground beef and rice and broccoli. You don't have to go straight to that, and you probably aren't going to be eating 8 ounces of ground beef at once anyways. If you're eating 2.5 or 2 ounces of meat or 3 ounces of meat, I hope it's more than 2 ounces, but if you're eating 3 ounces of meat right now, maybe increase it to 4. We do everything by grams, so I'm going to say it in grams. If you're eating 100 grams or 80 grams of ground beef or ground turkey or shredded chicken or whatever it is, increase it from 80 to 100 or 100 to 120 or 125 a little bit. Have a little bit more yogurt with your breakfast in the morning. If you're cooking eggs in the morning, have one additional whole egg and get 6 more grams of protein that way, or add some egg whites to those whole eggs. You won't notice the difference. Super easy way to get more protein in there throughout the day. And egg whites add a ton of volume. Obviously very easy to eat, but it's little things like that. If you just add a little bit throughout the day, and if you're eating, say, 10 to 15 grams of protein is all you're getting in your actual food, and you're having to supplement with the rest of the protein, just add 5 or 10 grams of protein to each meal, slowly step it up, and you'll go from having 3 shakes a day down to 2, down to 1, and then you'll be there. So you can kind of do it in steps.
I had to slowly step up like that because I was not a big meat person at all. I would gag, especially reheated meat. I had not a good relationship with
You
it.
gotta reheat it in the pan. That's the key.
Yeah.
If you can. If you have access to a pan or an air fryer,
Makes it so much easier.
10 times better than a microwave. But I've had those jobs where you've got to microwave reheat food, and it is what it is.
I think that's where you can step it up slowly, like you were saying, add a little bit to that meal at a time. Another thing I learned for myself while I was healing my food relationship is I used to have a lot of fear around adding things like avocado, adding things like sauces, and thinking like, oh my gosh, it has to be this perfect 0-calorie sauce. But I just learned that if I could have a little bit of sauce that I enjoy, or a vegetable with it that I enjoy, or some type of seasoning, avocado, something to pair with the meal, it made it so much easier for me. You still typically will not find me just snacking on chicken breast. I am still a person that I prefer that my protein source is paired with rice, potatoes. It's a lot easier for me to eat, and that's just something I've learned about myself. But it helps me reduce my food noise knowing that I'm not relying on protein shakes. Which honestly leads us right into the next swap that we were going to talk about, is swapping out protein bars to Greek yogurt and raspberries. This one is huge for volume, more protein, and fiber from the berries, especially raspberries. Because it's pretty rare that I feel like a protein bar hits on any of those. Like you might get a big chunk of protein for a period of time, but it's similar to a protein shake. It goes down so fast, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about food 20 minutes later.
Also, and depending on, not to call out any certain ingredients here in particular, but whether it's from the sugar alcohols or if they have added fiber, there's so many different types of protein bars, right? Those legendary protein Pop Tarts that you used to eat on repeat until we pointed that out or realized that those were actually upsetting your stomach, and you just kept doing it every day. I think you were having at least one a day, like without fail.
I struggled to let go of those.
Those things will upset people's stomach. They talk about being bloated. They talk about not feeling good. They talk about how their stomach hurts afterwards. And so just learning to eat a real meal. When I eat a protein bar, it tastes like a candy bar. The Bear Bells ones are pretty good. I'm not gonna say they're bad. I think they're great, but for $4, I would much rather just go have a meal and feel good. However, if it's a lake day and I'm on a boat, or if I'm out golfing, I'm not going to pack yogurt with me 90% of the time. Probably going to have the protein bar in the bag or a protein shake in the bag, which is fine because that's not something I rely on during my daily routine. So
Absolutely. And when you do have those protein bars or the protein shake, it is being able to be self-aware that you may feel more of those food noise feelings. Like I mentioned, being on my cycle last week, I was having rice for two of my meals, and just knowing myself, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense that I'm feeling a bit more hunger. I'm thinking about food a little bit more. I'm thinking about my next meal a little bit more, just completely normal. I think it's a time and place thing.
Yeah.
But if you can make the swap to things like Greek yogurt and raspberries when you're at work, you're probably going to feel a lot better. You're going to see cravings go down. You're going to see the food noise go down. And you'll find yourself reaching for protein bars less when you realize how much better you can feel with less food noise and how much easier it is to stick to your fat loss phase. Our last swap here.
Swap number 5, whole eggs to egg whites plus 1 to 2 whole eggs. So, yeah, I guess I'll talk about some of the benefits. You can keep the yolk flavor and the nutrients if you have one whole egg, and you can just stretch that meal a little bit further. Or if you're struggling to get your protein in, like we said, I guess I kind of already covered this. Add some egg whites, liquid egg whites. Or I guess if you're the type of person that wants to crack a whole egg and sit there and sift out the yolk, you can do that too. I hate doing that. If I'm gonna crack an egg, I'm gonna eat the whole egg. And then I'll just get the 6-pack of liquid egg whites from Costco. I think it's Lucerne Farms or something like that. Not telling you to shake those up and drink them by themselves. You can definitely, by all means, mix those into a protein shake or mix it with electrolytes or something. I've heard people say that that's also great. That's not really me.
Smoothies before.
Yeah, smoothies mask it very, very well. But the points here being talking about eating whole meals and not drinking stuff, not having liquid calories. Add egg whites to your whole eggs and stretch that meal a little bit further, increase the volume, fluff them up in a pan, and they're good.
I'll add to this point. I actually used to have a fear of egg whites. I was so grossed out by them. And I learned, again, a hack for myself is it wasn't telling myself, oh, I can't have whole eggs when I'm on a diet. You know, it's everyone on Instagram is telling me that whole eggs are the reason I can't stay in the fat loss phase or something, but just reminding yourself, like, you can have the whole eggs, mix it with a little bit of egg whites, have more protein, and then you get the best of both worlds, in my opinion. That's how I got over that fear of having to only have egg whites. It's like, oh, I can just mix the two. It's just having a little bit more curiosity in this journey of like, how can I make this more fun, more enjoyable, and how can I actually like the meals that I'm eating without feeling like you're white knuckling it the whole time?
And one last thing to add to that, it's not like we're anti-fat or saying you have to eat very, very low fat, but when you have things like 3 whole eggs and an undisclosed amount of butter and oil in the pan, or if you go get a traditional American breakfast anywhere and people say, I got eggs and wheat toast, like, good, go for me. And they want to cheer. And I'm like, well, okay, well, that toast there's oil on the pan, or excuse me, oil on the flat top that they're cooking it on. So you're getting oil just from your food being on the pan. They're putting butter on the toast even before they bring it out to you most of the time. The eggs have butter, the eggs have oil, any of the hash browns, any of the other stuff, butter, oil, XYZ, etc. It adds up. So you might have a meal when people say eggs are really high in protein, and they're actually higher in fat than they are in protein. Same thing with peanut butter. When somebody says, well, peanut butter is really high in protein, peanut butter, roughly, depending on the brand, is 75 to 80% fat.
Yeah.
Not protein. It is a fat source with protein, very minimal amount of protein in it. So it doesn't mean eggs are bad. They're very nutrient dense. They're really good for you, but it's very easy to get carried away from a caloric standpoint of cooking your eggs in butter and oil and putting butter and oil on everything else. And you can add hundreds of calories throughout the week without even knowing it and kicking yourself out of a calorie deficit if you're not aware of those things.
Yep, which can also then play into your food noise because you're like, why am I still feeling hungry even though the calories are there? It's very confusing.
Yeah.
But the bigger picture with all of this and why this matters long term is making swaps like this. Truly, your food noise will shrink over time when your meals actually satisfy you and you're not just, sitting there waiting for your next meal, like feeling like you have an addiction to food by any means. But just being able to have volume around food, it's going to help with not feeling like you're restricted. You're feeling full. You're not thinking about your next meal all the time. And I think you and I have both struggled with that before.
Absolutely.
In your diet phases and my diet phases, there'd be times I like wouldn't want even Ryan to ask me when my next meal is because like just don't ask. Like I'm already thinking about it plenty. I don't need you to add to this. But when food stops being a problem, I think everything in this journey starts to get a lot easier. You start to surprise yourself in the types of foods you put together. I'm eating meals now that I can tell you I would not have eaten 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that has again, taken levels, it's taken steps. I used to be a person that could barely hit 100 grams of protein, and now I can hit 140 grams of protein without a protein shake and without protein bars or protein Pop Tarts. And so that took time and trying new things and being willing to swap out foods.
And you've also tested it too. You know that when you don't hit 140 grams of protein through eating actual meals and you do supplement with protein and you do go low fiber, how hungry you are. And you're almost ravenous some days. You're like, wow, I really screwed up. I should have not had that protein shake earlier, or I should have not had that whatever treat, insert treat here earlier, or cinnamon roll, or something that didn't have fiber but took up a bunch of my calories. I would have way rather had a bowl full of fruit and vegetables and yogurt and eggs and protein and whole food.
Absolutely.
And so once you start to feel good and you start to know, wow, I'm not only am I getting closer to my goals, but I also feel better doing this, making these decisions, and not trying to get in all the legendary protein Pop Tarts or the candy or bullshit that people try to fit in the if it fits your macros game.
Yeah.
You don't want to go back.
Oh yeah. The if it fits your macros game that's a whole nother podcast, I swear. A whole nother topic. But I struggled with that a lot with protein shakes. I tried to save all my snacks and then I would just drink a protein shake so that I could ensure that I still had those snacks. One last thing I wanted to add to that, making these swaps will help so much. But other things that we help our clients through is helping them learn how to plan meals ahead, prep food in advance, and then remove the constant food decisions. Because if you're not constantly making decisions, you have less decisions to make around food, you're just going to inevitably have less food thoughts, and it gets so much easier. So worth it.
Plan, prepare, have the conversation with your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is, whoever you're living with. And if you're parents too, your kids will actually adapt pretty easily. Most of the parents that we talk to, they're actually shocked a few weeks in. They're like, wow, my kids actually really like this. They like having this for breakfast, or they like having this higher protein meal. And especially if your kids are in sports too, you already know that parents will go to the end of the world to help their kids hit their goals. This is part of that.
Yeah.
This is going to also teach them good habits. This is also going to make sure that they're getting the proper nutrients and protein, and they don't necessarily have to go to the extent of tracking macros, especially if they're younger. I wouldn't advise that, but I don't think there's ever a negative that's going to come from it, from teaching your kids how to eat, teaching them how to train, teaching them how to get strong and fuel your body and to feel your best and perform your best. So
lead by example. It's like the more you reduce your food noise, everyone around you is going to benefit.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I think that wraps it up. If this is something that has taken up too much mental space for you personally, and you don't want to figure this out on your own, you can shoot us a message. We have a ton of free guides. We actually have a food swaps guide. Just shoot us a message on Instagram, Facebook, or leave a comment down below, and we'll connect with you. Just leave your Instagram handle or something like that so we know how to contact you. If you're watching this on Spotify or YouTube, leave your Instagram handle, or you can direct message us on Facebook or Instagram. Maddie or I will get back to you. And if you want to see what this looks like, see if you'd be a good fit for coaching, and you don't want to have to think about these food swaps and you just want it all done for you, again, shoot either one of us a message. We'll reach out and chat soon. Thanks for watching the show.